On today's Caring for Caregivers conversation, we're talking with the author of a new book. And what makes this book unusual is it's a novel about caregiving. It's called Spin Cycle by Alfredo Botello. And we have Alfredo here to talk with us about why he wrote the book, what he learned over the course of it, and what he's learned from talking with readers who are reacting to the emotions that are brought up in Spin Cycle. So it's a fascinating conversation. Let's get to it with Alfredo. Thank you very much for joining us, Alfredo. I'm really looking forward to talking about your book, Spin Cycle, about the kind of travails of family caregiving. And at ARP, we are all about helping people feel like they are not alone on the journey of caregiving. So really appreciate you joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me, Bruce. Since my own experience as a caregiver with my mom starting 5 or 6 years ago, I've turned into a bit of a zealot on this topic. I will talk to anybody on the street, in the market, anywhere, just to try to help people maybe feel, and you kind of took the words out of my mouth, a little bit less alone in this, because that's how I felt. So I'm very glad to be on the show.
Well, exactly, because it is easy to feel alone. And just kind of getting involved in this field more and more, I realize we're not alone. This is kind of a universal experience. But why did you decide to write this book, and why did you make it a novel?
It was really a necessity for me. This is the book I wish I had 5 or 6 years ago. So when my mom first started changing and showing signs of misplacing her car at the supermarket, or not being able to take her meds, even though I made a checklist, and following me around in her condo if I just left the room. Things like this that I had never seen before. I was snippy. I was short with her. And she's the hero of my life, a single mom, put me through school, all those things. And here I was repaying her by being short-tempered and kind of a jerk, I thought. And I realized later, as I came to understand, that she had, and the official diagnosis was likely onset Alzheimer's. Once that got in my head, I realized I wished I had had the emotional support on this subject when it all began, because there are books out there, kind of nonfiction how-to books, caretaker books, maybe with some bullet points that are super helpful. But where was somebody talking about the difficult emotions, the guilt, the shame, the resentment, those things that at least my friends and I are finding we're all having those feelings, and we feel bad about it. And I wanted somebody, and in this case, it's the main character Ezra and his students, somebody else who's talking about the difficult stuff, because I think it's the whole topic of caregiving is, in my mind, criminally under discussed, but especially the emotional toll and what that means for adult children.
Yeah, I think that's one of the great things about the book, and I've got some questions to ask you about that. But kind of about the hard side of caregiving, and the really emotional side, and also the need to take care of yourself and have a little bit of respite, because otherwise it is so easy to get short-tempered and impatient, and perhaps not do as good a job of caregiving as you would hope to. But actually, before we get into that, could you tell us a little bit about the plot of the book, about the story?
Sure. So Ezra Pavich is at the end of his rope with taking care of his mom, Irene. She's doing all the things that are making him crazy, that we all experience as caregivers. On top of that, his wife has left him. He's estranged from his son. He's caught in the sandwich generation. He's got a teenage son trying to take care of mom. And then he's got a ne'er-do-well brother who never shows up for any of the heavy lifting. He's not there for the doctor's appointments, the trips to the market, but mom seems to just like him more anyway, which just adds to it all. So in his desperation, he's like, well, I'm a teacher. I'm going to call it a school. And really, that's kind of an exalted way to put it. He basically rents out a little storefront in a strip mall, kind of between, a vape shop and a discount auto insurance place. And to his surprise, 9 people show up on day one. And these 9 people, from their 20s into their 70s, are just like him. They're desperate. They want to become more compassionate caregivers, but they just don't know how. They can't get out of the way of their own anger and their issues around it. So he starts this school really to help himself as much as them. And over the course of the novel, it unfolds that he himself has a kind of a secret agenda for wanting to talk to other caregivers, which gets revealed, as does one of his students. but it's all about trying to crawl your way back to some form of compassion, both for the people you're taking care of, but also for yourself. So it's really about nine misfits, kind of, like I say, struggling to get back to compassion.
Yeah, I thought that was one of the things that really worked well in the book, that it's not just a story of one caregiver and one person being cared for as you might think. I thought the plot structure of having him bring other caregivers together in, as you say, in kind of a school type setting, like presumably to teach them, but as you say, that's not exactly how it works out. They teach him, but there's also the idea that you can touch on other caregiving situations besides the main storyline. Is that something that you did sort of on purpose? And how did you decide on those other storylines besides the main one?
It was very intentional, and it goes to the reason that this is not a memoir, that this is fiction, because like you said, I knew right away when I thought of doing the book that I didn't want to just hear one person's experience. I wanted eight or nine or however it turns out to be, there's nine different points of view. And I wanted to capture people who are at all different stages, people who maybe are religious, not religious, poor, rich, young, old, have snarky senses of humor, are very sincere, don't say much, say a lot. So I wanted to capture the range of personalities and the range of experiences that people have with their parents. And when they share their experiences, of course, it's all different. So one person might say, God, my problem is my mom just runs out the house naked all the time. And somebody else says, well, somebody else, my dad is passive aggressively always saying I could do more, making me feel guilty. I mean, whatever the situation is, I was able, through fiction and through multiple characters, to have that variety. Plus, because they're all in the classroom, they can bicker and talk to each other. Because while the subject of caregiving and dementia, I think inherently can be a bit heavy, I wanted the book to be a joy to read. Like, yes, there is humor in it, and it's not banana peel humor. It's meant to come out of character. And when you have a bunch of people with the same problem stuck in a room, I think that naturally evolves. At least it did for me. And so I felt that this could make it a pleasurable thing and a multifaceted, multi-viewpoint approach to telling the story.
Yeah, I would say there's definitely a lot of humor, a lot of snarky humor, as you say. I would also say there were points in the book where I kind of had to put it down for a little while, because it was hitting on situations that were very real. I think like you talk a lot about how do you make time for caregiving, and sometimes you don't want to go and see your mom and take her out, or you're not appreciated, or all these things that people have to deal with emotionally. And then you also talk a lot about kind of the family around you. And I shouldn't say around you, because I know it's not a book about you. It's a book that comes from you. But there are other characters in the book who are a brother, for example, and there's an ex-wife in the book, and a son. How do you think about those kind of relationships? Because you still have your life going on. As you said, it's a sandwich generation story, and a lot of people struggle with that. How do you think about life as it goes on while you're caregiving?
Yeah, so I've got sort of two thoughts on that. The first is, um, there is an important brother figure called Loomis. And even though I'm an only without a brother, the idea of a kind of happy-go-lucky, shows up when he wants to, kind of steals the show, and then leaves before anything gets hard. I both crave that, and I despise it, because I have to do all the heavy lifting. So I wanted people, and I bring this up because when I've gone to in-person book clubs, a lot of people seize on, oh man, if you knew my brother or my sister, they're just like that. They don't do anything, but they expect the reward, or they show up at the last minute with a piece of cake and mom just loves them. So people are really kind of responding to the idea of that. And for me, this is now speaking both of the book, but also of my own life, as you were asking the question about family dynamic. I think one of the things that is true with caregiving is that it's not just contained to you and mom or dad, it spills over. So I also beat myself up when I come home and I am in a maybe a sullen or maybe a kind of short mood with my girlfriend or with my son, and I realize as I'm taking back to my other home some of these emotions. So it puts a strain on that stuff. And so there's that kind of double whammy effect that, okay, so it can be tough with mom or dad sometimes, but then it does bleed over into your family life. And so in the book, it's not a total shock that he has got issues around his ex-wife and around his son. And I do make a point in the book of showing how part of that is that he's bringing home a lot of that negative energy, and your loved ones they're there for you, but they can only take so much. So you have to kind of sort of almost like, I don't know, stop off somewhere and take 5 minutes in the car before you open the door, or whatever your trick is to kind of reset.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that is helpful about the novel format is you can, instead of saying, that sometimes your brother can be unsupportive or you can have difficult relatives and it's kind of dry. Here you really draw a picture of a real example of that. And, perhaps, I wouldn't say it's extreme because a lot of people have extreme family members. But I think it enables you to sort of paint a more honest picture of how people feel.
Yes, I agree. It's so the book has, to me, if I couldn't and I didn't pull any punches in the book. So Ezra's reaction, the jealousy toward his brother, how his brother kind of skitters through life, his son's view on things, everybody's view. It's supposed to be raw. So I hope as people read this, they go, "Oh my gosh, finally somebody is saying what I'm too embarrassed or ashamed to say or admit that I felt that way or I did that kind of same behavior." Because if I gloss it or sugarcoat it, there's no point to the book. I think this goes beyond caregiving. I think any good novel is honest. You've got to be a little bit honest. And I choose to write grounded stories. I'm not in space, and I'm not, my stuff is not like that. It's very realistic. So I want you to feel maybe a little bit embarrassed, but also, like I say, comforted that you're not the only one. And so I've got to be honest in those things.
Yeah, well, I think it is a very honest the book, and as as I said, there are some difficult moments if you've been a caregiver where you say, yeah, I can relate to that situation, but it's almost like it doesn't have value to build a community of people who are interested in caregiving and then not talk about the things that are real. But I'm wondering, was there a moment that was the inspiration for the book, or when you said, I need to write a book? I mean, was there one thing that made you, just say, this is my next project?
Sure. And Bruce, hang on. I just see that the cat walked in, so I know you can.
Oh.
So I'm going to just close the door. Let's let them something open. There was kind of an aha moment for me. Your question about what caused me to say this is going to be the next book, and this is something I want to also. I was hoping we'd get there some way. I want to share this with anybody who's listening. So, my therapist, she's a wonderful person. I was bemoaning how everything was making me crazy. Like when I dropped my mom off, and at this point, she had gone from living with my girlfriend and I, and before that, I had been living with her down in Southern California. I'm in Northern California, and I finally decided the best thing was to move her close by so I could see her as often as I could here in an assisted living. And that was working. But whenever I would, for example, just leave, I never wanted to turn back as I was walking to my car because I know she'd be looking out the door for me. And I would just feel guilty, like I didn't spend enough time with her. And even when I do stuff, one of the things is the filters come off with people. You say what you think when those normal things of sort of the polite filters go away. So she'll just say, when am I going to see you next? Or that's not enough. And I was telling my therapist this, and she goes, Alfredo, it's never going to be enough. You could put a cot in her room, sleep next beside her for 24 hours. But if you go to the bathroom, she might ask, well, where were you? And suddenly I realized that's right. I can't do enough. And when that was kind of a watershed moment for me, I was able to kind of let go of some of the guilt and shame and resentment I felt, because I realized I can only do so much, and that's got to be good enough. And so when I had that feeling, which was, I was coming out of kind of, like I say, resentment and shock and confusion, what was happening with mom, I don't get it, to kind of Oh, ho, it felt positive. It felt like I had a breakthrough where, because as we talk about all the hard parts about dementia, I actually think that somewhere in there are moments of really pleasant surprise. This was one for me, but even with my mom, as I've kind of shifted my attitude a little bit over the years, I've discovered that it's not all just obligation and work. There are some things that are special and that I treasure that are specific to our relationship now with dementia.
Have you learned in the course of being involved with this subject and writing this book, is there any advice that you would have for caregivers to help them?
Yes, the biggest one is, and I'm not an athlete, I was not a jock at all in high school, but I'm going to borrow a sports metaphor, which is you have to take what the defense gives you. So I am a Virgo, so I am very kind of fixed in my way. So, for example, when my mom started having trouble telling apart her meds and taking them in the right order, the right amount of times a day, I thought I came up with this brilliant checklist, as simple as could be. And I kept revising it to make it more and more simple. And then finally she got it. I'm like, great, problem is solved. And a week later, that list was too complicated. And I was pulling my hair out thinking I had just solved the problem. So the lesson from that one little anecdote is that don't you it's not fixed, it's ever evolving, and you do have to be able somehow to pivot, to change, to roll with it. You have to just kind of read the room a little bit, kind of enter their reality as much as you can. And once you do that, once you stop trying to say this problem is solved and fixed and not to be dealt with anymore, you're going to have a much better time as you roll through it. And part of that, I think, Bruce, is I needed to stop thinking of everything about mom as a problem to be solved. Uh, there's a character in the book, and this is born out in my own life, who basically points out that, look, mom is not broken. Actually, she's just different. So when I had that kind of shift in thinking of, oh, it's not a problem that's broken to be fixed. It's just she's now different than she was. So I was different when I was a baby. I was different as a teenager. She's different now, and if I can adjust my expectations, things will go a lot more smoothly. So, like I say, pivot, be able to change what you think is your normal way.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point that, we all change. And, a lot of people take into caregiving the idea that she took care of me when I was a baby. Now I owe it, to her to take care of her in the same way. But is there anything you've learned about sort of balancing that sense of responsibility and maybe also taking care of yourself and your own life? And, if you have children yourself,
I do.
balancing that?
Yeah, and there are kind of concrete things. So I will indulge myself, and I will. So I'm not a huge sports guy, but again, if this is kind of related in a way to caregiving for my mom, which is that my son, when he was in high school, played football. So if I wanted to stay connected to him, I had to learn about football. And soon I was working on the chain gang, and I knew I was supposed to hate the Denver Broncos, although I didn't know exactly why, but I just knew I was supposed to. And so I would take now. So now, for example, flash forward, I will veg out and I watch some sports. I'll watch the British baking show, just kind of uh, easy brain candy, or I'll walk the dogs. If you have pets, I mean, people who have pets know that nothing puts you in the moment like an animal, because they are there and they are not thinking about the past. They're not worried about the future. They are right in the present, and they kind of bring you to the present. And those are little tricks that I think are very helpful. And the biggest one in terms of balance, though, is what I said a bit earlier, which is this idea that you can't beat yourself up for not thinking that you've done everything and been there as often as you can. What I just said a minute ago, which is you can always do more, as my therapist kind of put with sarcasm, but she's right. You can't always do more, but you have to let that go, or you'll make yourself nuts. So those are some kind of concrete things I do, and the kind of umbrella, I guess, the thought that helps me get through it and gives me the space to take the break.
One thing that's also very interesting about your book is it's told from a male caregiver point of view, and also his brother, who he has to deal with, is also male. And we sort of have this stereotype of women as family caregivers. Was that on purpose, or what are your thoughts on kind of the idea of men stepping up as caregivers?
Yeah, it wasn't a deliberate choice. Like, am I going to make the protagonist female or male? I just naturally kind of, and this is the way I write in general. I sort of organically drift toward things, even though I can't fully explain it in the moment. I just kind of go with my instinct. But it did fit into the overall umbrella, which where I was very consciously thinking that, man, if caregiving 101 was taught in high school or college, I missed that class. I mean, there was plenty of stuff to make me expect, oh, if I have a kid one day, it's going to be 9 months and there's toys and there's books and Lamaze classes. All that is kind of drilled into us. But no one was really talking about, maybe in one day you're going to have another kid and she's going to be 75 or 80 and not rosy cheeked and cute and may have real strong opinions on things. And you're kind of going to be a parent again. So that was missing. And in the same way, I think there are plenty of male caregivers for whatever reason. That's just how it works out, whether they're the one in the family who's suited that role, or they're the only, like in my case, I happen to be an only child, so I fell into it. But I think that's also, it just fits under the umbrella of let's talk about all these different experiences that we're not talking enough about.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. I mean, I share that experience of being an only child and therefore being a male caregiver. And you just kind of do it the way that you have to do it. There's not a job description. You just have to take it as it comes. Has there been anything surprising to you about writing the book, or perhaps after you've written the book? I know you've talked with other caregivers and gotten a fair amount of feedback. Is there anything from all that experience that you didn't know going in and you think that other people don't know that you think would be helpful?
Yeah, the biggest thing is back to what we said in the beginning, is you're not alone. The minute you start to open up about these things, and if I sort of dip my toe in and confide in a friend, or certainly when I go to a book club or let's say some kind of an elder care meet and greet, where people are already tuned for that, everyone is saying, oh yes, this is the big thing that no one's talking about, is that we are all going to be caregivers at some point. And there is no book on how to do it. Like you say, we're all kind of winging it. And that is the nature of it. And it's kind of okay, but it's great. It's such a comfort just to share those experiences with other people, because you'll find that you aren't alone. You might think so, but once you start opening it up, and hopefully the book will prompt people to feel not so alone, maybe to confide in friends and people at work that, man, I'm going through this right now and it's really, really hard. And I guarantee you that 90% of them will go, really? Me too. Okay, can we have lunch and talk about this? So that's been a very pleasant surprise. And the other thing that's I kind of alluded to a second ago, one of the really unexpected surprises is that if you can kind of roll with it, you can find new joy. So for example, my mom, even though we can't tease each other the way we used to, the verbal stuff is kind of faded a little bit. I've discovered that she loves puppy and kitten videos and baby videos. So I'll put on YouTube, and when we go to Starbucks, her hearing's not great either. I'll just put on my laptop. I'll flip the laptop around and we'll look at some of those videos. I'll type in 24-point font so she can read it. And then I've discovered, well, we can communicate that way. And this has been I like to share this bit too. One thing that's just a kind of a nice reminder to have some faith in humanity is that, so she is really, like I say, baby crazy too. So when we go out to the market or the coffee shop and anybody with a kid from 0 to 2 walks in, she just goes right over with her walker, no social barriers, and goes right up to them and stays and says, oh, and oohs and ahs about the kid. And with dementia, it's interesting. We all kind of know that the social contract is you go, say hi, oh, what a beautiful baby, you nod for 2 seconds, and then you walk away. But my mom doesn't do that anymore. She'll stay for 20, 30, 40 seconds, something where normally we think, oh God, that's super awkward. You can't really, encroach on someone's personal space like that. But Bruce, I tell you, to a person, nobody has been put off. They all can kind of instinctively understand, so this mom's a little bit different, and then she wants to just hang and ooh and ah over my baby or the dog I brought in, let her do it. So it's all been in my head. Like that kind of, oh, I'm embarrassed, or you, mom, you're overstaying your welcome. That's me. And I've learned, wait a minute, Alfredo, you need to be a little bit more open about how people are. Maybe you're not giving them enough credit. So these are the lessons I have learned that I don't think I could have learned if I wasn't taking care of my mom.
Wow. Well, that's the thing. Yes, as you mentioned earlier, you do have to take it as it comes and find the positives in the changes. But I've really enjoyed talking with you. This is an excellent book. Is there anything I haven't asked you that you would want to leave people with?
I think we've covered it. I think the main thing, of course, is I think, like I say, I've turned into a zealot about this. Please take a look at the book just to find the comfort and that you're not alone. That is the main thing. And you can find the book anywhere you can find it: Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, my website, alfredobotello.com. Because I want to spread the word. That is the main thing. Is just, and the book happens to be my way of doing it. Other people do it differently. I've met people who use music to go and connect with families and have families connect with their loved ones, or coloring. There's different ways. Once language leaves, there's other ways to connect. This happens to be mine. So I think we've kind of covered the most important things, which is compassion, and you're not alone.
Great, great. Well, well, as you said, the book is available wherever books are sold, and online, and Alfredo's website is alfredobotello.com, and you can connect with him there and get information on his work. And once again, we are all about caring for caregivers. And our ARP site for that is arp.org/caregiverswa. All those links will be in the description. And once again, Alfredo, thank you very much for writing this book, and B, for talking with us today.
Thanks so much, Bruce, for having me on. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Oh, and also I want to mention that there's an audiobook version. I read half of it and I listened to half of it on audio, and the audiobook is very well done. So just wanted to put a shout out for that. And with that, thank you for joining us.
Take care. Thank you.